you have got to stop holding back. And I don't mean holding back in the sense of performance level in terms of not putting your all into it, because I assume you're working hard on what you're doing. This has to do with when we zoom back out and ask, but what are you doing? Because quite often what happens, whether I'm running into game developers at conferences, whether I'm running into people who run small businesses, whether I'm working with just various other people in my life, so often what they've got is a really weak angle of attack and a backup plan. And their thinking is that, well, my backup plan is that if this, I'm kind of fiddle around on this other thing, and if it doesn't really work out, then I've got a surefire thing. Then then I'll pivot to this other thing. Now, it's always good to have a backup plan. It's always good to have ways to mitigate risk in terms of having a strategy for if this current thing falls through. But the reality is, if you think your backup plan is going to be more successful, more certain, more surefire than the thing you're doing, then that shouldn't be your backup plan. That should be what you're doing. That's the angle of attack. Because what you quickly find out when you tackle the thing that was the surefire thing is that A, it's not. B, it's always harder than we assume it would be. And part of what's going on is that out there in the world, you're competing with people who are doing the thing that they are most sure was going to be the best thing that they could do. For some of them, it might be their fallback plan. But the thing is that we can shave out that entire step, which for some people is a year, for some people is years plural, of doing the thing where they're like, well, but let me just see. Now, there's maybe not any harm in that, as long as they understand that that's what they're doing. But this has to do with, again, that where things get interesting is when we try the thing that we thought for sure would work, and that's when we realize there's a lot more to it. That's when the real learning starts happening. That's when the first adaptation and testing and paying attention, taking feedback, seeking feedback, that's when things get interesting. When we start to try the thing we're quite sure would work, and that comes from no longer holding ourselves back. And this is also about not giving ourselves the excuse. Because when we feel like there's some better thing we could be doing that we're more sure would work for us, but we're not doing that thing, then we always have this kind of excuse of like, well, yeah, but I'm not doing the thing that I know could work, right? I'm not, I know it would work better. I mean, think of kind of a sports analogy, right? I'd be like, I know it would work better if I held the baseball bat with two hands, but because I'm only holding it with one hand, well, can't expect the ball to go that far. But I'm going to try this first, and then we'll see. And my fallback plan is two hands. As though suddenly, baseball is easy. Like, it's still a skill people spend their entire life getting better at to do it correctly. To do the thing that they are quite confident is kind of the way to do it. And so this removes the excuses, which is equally important because as long as we have those excuses there, they can smooth over so many things that we would learn from. If we were trying the thing that we were quite certain, quite sure has the best shot of anything we're capable of working, and that's what we're going after, that's what we're doing, that's what we're trying to do, you're going to learn different things from that. Now, lastly, I'm going to put the usual giant asterisk caveat disclaimer on this, that when I say working, well, pretty importantly, this obviously depends on what your objectives are. And, my focus very much, quite often, as a trainer, as an educator, as a game developer, for that matter, is often about, are you making the kind of game you want to make? Because if that's your priority, there's ways to do that that don't necessarily overlap one and the same with what does the paying market want in the current monetization schemes that work, right? That's a different question. This has more to do with if your aim for success has to do with getting festival attention, has to do with reaching customers, has to do with running a sustainable business or those kind of things. And that's where those priorities might shift into, once again, not holding ourselves back. But I'll say the same then true equally so for if you're going the artistic direction, if you're going the self-vision direction, if you're going that you have these ideas that you just want to see realized and work and happen, and that your priority isn't that business side, then the same thing still applies of stop holding back there too, and sort of in terms of giving yourself the excuse that, well, this isn't really your real vision. This is just sort of another thing kind of fiddle around with first. Go for the thing you think is going to achieve your purpose, because that's when the learning gets interesting, when that turns out to be more complicated than we expect it to be. That's stuff for the day. Thank you as always for tuning in. Have another video for y'all tomorrow.